So Tori, you heard about Paul off of a podcast you listen to. Which one is that?
Yeah, so actually my favorite podcast is Tinfoil Hat Show or Tinfoil Hat Podcast with Sam Tripoli. I started following him during COVID because he was one of the only kind of big name guys who was really speaking out about what was happening. And it's been really cool to follow his podcast because it really starts out pretty new agey, but he's a truth seeker. And the last couple of episodes, I mean, he's talking about Jesus, he's reading the Bible, he's talking about Genesis 6, and he had Paul on, and the episode blew my mind. It's one of my favorites. So I'm so excited we get to talk to him.
Yeah, and I love that. So with us today on the Camp Hermon Podcast, we have Paul Stobbs. We heard him, like Tori said, on Sam Tripoli's Tinfoil Hat podcast, and he did a great job. Just to put this in context for you guys, this is a secular guy that, is very much, at least, language wise and mannerism wise, he's rolling with the world. He's a popular comedian. One of his co-hosts is an actor on the Goldbergs show. He plays the coach. I love that guy. I had a coach just like him when I was in high school. But Paul represented on that. And what we want to do is we have him with us, and we want to talk to him about some of his research on how he believes that like the Nephilim had a clownish type of appearance, and how that kind of clown, I guess, folklore is kind of connected to the Nephilim. I'm super interested by it. I can't wait to hear what he's got for us. But Paul, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit? Maybe let people know where they can get your YouTube videos and all of that. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for that generous introduction. That was really nice. So I am a YouTuber primarily. You can find all my work on a channel called UnderstandingConspiracy. I've been doing it for about 10 years now on YouTube, and I've kind of become known, as you just explained, for the guy who talks about clowns and their bizarre connection to the Nephilim of the ancient biblical past. So if you want to find my work, you can find a 41 episode playlist dedicated to this, spanning over 7 years. And the connections just keep rolling. I'm just in the middle of making the 42nd episode right now. Actually, I'm writing the script for that one as well. And I'm currently exploring the oceanic regions, the archipelago of Indonesia, Thailand, China, Japan, all the way to India, and their Rakshasa demon. So that's something coming out very soon. But that's me in a nutshell. I'll let you guys take it from there.
Yeah, that's really super cool. Because you kind of heard, like, when I first saw just the thumbnail of the podcast, I'm like, what? The Nephilim look like clowns? This sounds kind of funny to me, But then I heard you talking. I'm like, oh, this is not like just, it's speculation to a certain extent, but it's not. It's founded upon like actual deep research, which I found super interesting. Tori, you want to add anything and maybe ask the first question to Mr. Paul here?
Yeah. Well, just to kind of build on what you said, I would encourage you all to go listen to his episode on Tinfoil Hat Pod, because there's just so much information. And when I saw the thumbnail too, I was like, okay, so I've heard the Nephilim had red hair. Beyond that, I wasn't really sure exactly what the connection was going to be, but he goes into so much detail. It is so crazy, and it's so prolific throughout, like the folklore of basically every civilization, all the way up to like modern clowns, and he gets into, I've always kind of had this innate fear of clowns. I think a lot of people do, like something feels off, but like, even getting into Freemasonry and like their whole clown connection. I guess my first question would just be, what got you into researching this?
It spans over a long time, to be honest. First of all, just to expand on what you said, I know how crazy it sounds, and I know what it sounds like when you first hear the theory the Nephilim look like clowns. Trust me, I do. I did not wake up one day. I never grew up thinking I'm going to be the guy talking about clowns. That's not that guy. I don't really care about clowns, to be honest. I've never been a fan of them. They've not even been a thought of mine forever. I'm not like an enthusiast or anything. It just kind of happened organically. See, I came from the New Age originally, kind of. I wouldn't say I wasn't like a dream catcher, crystal using, tarot card reading, New Age or anything. I was more of just a psychedelic consciousness explorer type into all the fractal stuff and the geometry, and very, very logistical minded about it, coming out of an atheistic mindset, that type of guy. More Gnosticism than anything. And I saw some things during that time on DMT, and these hard psychedelic drugs, which convinced me there was a spirit realm. And we're talking 15 years ago here. This is a long time ago. And coming out of that, I started doing more research into the truth of culture. And for me, it was the 2012 end of the world stuff that kind of roped me in. And then it's one rabbit hole after another after that. And you end up obviously getting to the biblical truth at the very end of your research, where you finally discovered the final truth of what's really going on. So by the time I had got to that, I'd already been doing my conversion into Christianity, and I got heavily demonically attacked, and I had some visions of these psychedelic creatures on the other side. One particular vision of an extremely tall, black and white fractal jester-like thing with a huge wide grin and big glowing eyes, and I didn't really know what to make of it at the time. But as time went on, and I learned a lot more about the occult and symbolism and how the occult works with symbols, there was this moment in 2016 where everywhere in the Western world, in England all the way to America, was having this phenomena of people dressing like clowns and scaring people on street corners on the media. And the media was running with it hard. And I noticed that. I took notice of that because I was like, they don't show you anything unless they want you to be seeing it. So what is this about a clown mysteriously appearing? What does this mean exactly? This means something. It's all symbolism to these people. And through just years of research into a lot of Gary Wayne's work, somebody I've talked with twice on my channel very recently, I just had another discussion with him, I ascribe to his understanding of the Nephilim, that they are the offspring of fallen angels mating with the daughters of Cain. And I don't have to tell your audience about all of that. I'm sure they know everything about that already, so I won't go into details to expound upon that much more. But I'd always thought, what would an offspring of a seraphim, fiery flying serpent monster look like mixed with a human? That would look pretty strange, and that had always been in the back of my mind. And this 2016 clown sighting just sparked something in me, and I thought to myself, demons, clowns, Nephilim, there's something going on here. If demons are Nephilim and demonic clowns are always being shown, what is this thing? So I kind of just did a preliminary search for a Nephilim clown, and I found a video from somebody who was having a laugh at our expense. He wasn't really a conspiracy theorist, he was making fun of conspiracy theorists, and he was talking about the Nephilim and describing what they look like with red hair and white skin and 6 fingers. And then he comes to this dramatic conclusion at the end of his video, like, there's only one explanation: the Nephilim were interdimensional killer clowns from out of space, in that over-dramatized History Channel type conspiracy voice, And he was making fun of us, but there was something to it that clicked it in my mind then, Nephilim and clowns. So I started my research, and like I said, 7 years later, it kept snowballing and going and going and going, and now I'm halfway through writing a book on the subject, and I'm doing the podcast circuit, and it's more than obvious to me that what the clown truly is a purposefully created symbol that represents the Nephilim, used for occult purposes of channeling the spirits from the other side publicly, but remaining hidden while doing it. That's basically it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Paul, if you don't mind, I would like to, you said something in there when you kind of just glossed over it, but I'm super, super curious about it. You mentioned you had a DMT experience. Mm-hmm. I come from the SoCal drug culture back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I've done every single drug possible. I used to do LSD and shrooms religiously to have an encounter of some sort. Mm-hmm. So I've never done DMT, but I'm curious to hear from you now that you're a Christian and you're able to look back on the DMT experience. Is there any takeaways, or let's say even revelation, that you got from that? Because I could go on and on about, of what I've seen in the past, even though I wasn't saved and sanctified, there's a lot is revealed to you. And I just wonder from your standpoint if you have any takeaways from that.
Yeah, a lot. I've speculated about it plenty on my channel, to be honest, because those are the type of experiences that don't leave you. You know, you think about them for a long time. And obviously, I've tried to make it square up with biblical theology. I've tried to understand it in context to biblical history and what is this place really that we see when we go to these realms on things like dimethyltryptamine or Salvia divinorum, even another equally as powerful herb, which I did when I was 16 years old, not realizing it was an incredibly powerful psychedelic, you know, because it was sold legally in head shops in the UK as though it was like a harmless plant like hashish or something, like it was nothing, you know. And again, like yourself, you know, I was heavily in the microdosing LSD every day, taking shrooms ritualistically, doing DMT in a shamanistic attempt to actually make contact with things and to see what was really going on. You know, I was doing it hard, you know, for many years, smoking weed every day for 8 years, you know what I mean? I was one of those type of people, and I've been sober now for 6 years. I don't touch any of that stuff, and it's all gone now, you know, and I don't even drink. And I don't want to. The desire has left me. But back to what I took from the whole experience with all of it really is, it's not a special place, the DMT realm. It's not some mystical, magical, fifth dimensional, out of this world place where you're going that's better than our place where we are currently in physical 3-dimensional forms. That's kind of the main takeaway people always get from taking DMT. They think they're going somewhere special. They think they're seeing an enlightened place full of enlightened entities that are the ascended ones or the great teachers or masters or something along that line. But what I've realized is this is actually just Earth. It's here, right now. But it's more like the pipe work behind the walls of reality, the behind the scenes plumbing of how this world works. It's the thing that makes this, what we are living in right now, embodied, happen. It is this world. Our perception of it is just limited. And I've theorized that maybe this is something that did happen after the flood. Maybe that's what the rainbow could symbolize realistically. The light spectrum, our vision is the rainbow. That's all we can perceive in terms of the light spectrum. It's a very limited bandwidth. People have talked about this in the scientific community ad nauseum, you know, but I don't think it was a punishment. I think it was a mercy. So we will not perceive anymore the things that are currently in that realm. Because the Nephilim, when they died, the spirit or nefesh, whatever you want to call it, is still here. It can't leave this realm. It can't go up or down or anything. It's still here with us. They never left. Just because their bodies disappeared didn't mean their spirit left. When we die, it's said that we sleep, biblically speaking, until the great white throne judgment. We're not around communicating with people. We're not spirits wandering the earth that people can summon through a Ouija boards or something. The only thing you will contact are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, because that's what resides there. So I believe when you take DMT, or these hard, powerful psychedelics, enough of the minor ones as well to break through, as they call it, all you're doing is opening up your perceptions to then visualize the other side of the earth, the other side of the coin, the warp to the woof of the rug, you know. A rug is this beautiful arabesque pattern, but underneath it's an absolute mess where you see all the strings connect to make that pattern on top. That's where you're going. You're going to the chaotic realm where there are no embodied forms. So it's chaotic, it looks insane, it's fractaled in nature, it's moving continuously. And people are kind of tricked into believing, well, this must be an amazing, magical, heavenly place then. But it's not. It's a place where the entities on the other side want a body. That's the end goal. Where we are currently, is God's creation that he intended for us. This is the prize. This is it. This is where they want to be. This is what they will do anything to have a body again to experience. They don't have senses. They hunger continuously, but they can't quench that hunger or thirst. They wander in dry places, as it's described by Jesus. You know, these are suffering there. We're lucky that when we take DMT, we get to come back after 10 minutes. Could you imagine spending an eternity there? You would go insane, perhaps into a form of manic laughter continuously, like a joker or a jester in a sense. You know, you would go insane, and that's their fate. That's where they are. That's what their problem is. And you find people who take salvia, the main side effect is that you start howling with laughter manically, and you cannot stop. it's likely that you're channeling a demon of some kind who's in that state, and you are now manifesting that state. A lot like in the new Joker film, he has that illness where he cannot stop laughing impulsively. I do think there's a connection there in some way. People who take DMT regularly always report in these trip reports on the Nexus encountering jesters of some kind, or a jester-like looking strange entity. That's because the Nephilim did look like clowns and jesters, and that's what they're actually talking to. The spirit form of these once giant kings and rulers who aren't stupid, who know you intimately and will tell you anything they want to tell you to deceive you, to make you believe you're special or a god of some kind, to forward the agenda of their parents, the fallen angels who rebelled against God to begin with. These entities are not archetypical projections of the collective unconscious or whatever stupid, naive, Jungian descriptive these people want to give them. They are real, conscious, separate entities with a personality and desires and an agenda. And if you don't know that, you're going into a battlefield unarmed. You are fodder. Yeah. And that's basically all I took away from the whole thing in the end.
Wow. And yeah, they know us in a completely different way than we know ourselves, because they have a higher, I guess, perception. And they're smarter. Their IQ is vast. I mean, if we're at like 150, they might be at like 2,000 or 3,000. They've been around forever. And so, yeah, they deceive. And that's one thing I've never come back from a trip talking about how Jesus is the only way. I always came back from a trip like, no, I'm my own God. Like, I can control my destiny and I have that power. So very interesting. But Tori, I'll let you ask a question, but then this is a great segue to go right into the clown Nephilim, because yeah, Joe Rogan talks about it all the time and about how he sees these gestures. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Paul, the way that you described, the chaotic world, like the chaos underneath a tapestry, it kind of makes me think too. It's like we're on stage, like we're in a play, and like they're just backstage. So like, of course, like they know us and they can talk to us like they know us, because like they probably hear and maybe even see like what's going on the stage. Like they're very familiar. But yeah, but that chaos behind the scenes, yeah, that's so wild to me. And also, Mike, to what you said about coming back from a trip, like, oh, I'm my own God. It's like that same lie over and over, like what happened in the garden when humanity fell the first time. But yeah, so getting into clowns, something you had said on your show with Sam that really blew my mind was how the enemy will like use costumes to channel demons. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, we're just on the other side of Halloween, and I know that's a big debate amongst Christians too. Like, should we celebrate Halloween? Like, is it innocent? Is it not innocent? But I had never really thought about that dressing like something could be an invitation for them to come like into your body. So yeah, if you just want to talk about that a little.
Sure. So this is what's known throughout most cultures as a form of ancestor spirit worship. And this is how I've described it, and this is how it's well understood to be in mainly countries that have these very old folk traditions on every continent. It's kind of the oldest tradition usually, and it's not really rooted necessarily in religions. It's rooted in like an old verbal kind of ritual that tribes have done forever, and sometimes they get spiritualized by new religions that come along throughout history, and things get tagged along, but the roots are pretty much the same. So there's two ways it's done by most of these cultures. Either they dress like something in order to channel that thing and gain something from it for the tribe. Either a shaman is allocated to do this specifically within a tribe, or it's a free-for-all and anybody and everybody can all do it at once. It really doesn't matter. The end goal's the same. It's to channel the entity, and what they often dress like in all these different cultures, as I've shown in my series, is they have a very similar thread weaving through. And it's usually... they white the skin up with some kind of chalk or paint. They add red lines or patterns or polka dots to the skin. They put on some kind of red feathered headdress or anything to make the hair look dark or red, or some kind of multicolored. A huge golden crown with many embellishments all over it is common as well. And they wear extremely colourful psychedelic clothing. Now, what I've pretty much described there is a clown by a Western standard, but they all have their own stylistic, aesthetical differences, culturally relevant to each individual area. So, they're talking about the same creatures they call ancestor spirits, because what they're referring to is not ancestors as we, with the English language, would consider that word to be. That's just kind of the only word we have for it, but it's not really what they mean. They don't mean grandma or granddad or your great uncles and aunties from the 1800s or something like that. They mean the ancient ones, the ones who built their culture and civilization that go way back. The ones who built everything that they consider their worldview or structure, the creators of their reality. The Nephilim, the ancient kings and rulers, the only spirits, as I explained earlier, that are actually on the other side for them to channel, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim from the biblical perspective. But they call them their ancestors. So like I said, they all dress in the same way. Like a clown in some level of, they all have their own levels of doing that. So that's one way of doing it. They dress like the thing to channel the thing. That is pretty much the most powerful, common used way of doing it. One really obvious example, which I think a lot of people will know about, is the Haiti, the Vodou culture in Haiti. They dress like something called Baron Samedi, and it's a particular Iwa or god of their pantheon, the father god or the son of the father god, Papa Legba. And it comes from an ancient African ancestor spirit worship culture, which went over to Haiti and then mixed with like French Catholicism and Freemasonry. So it became this very strange looking ritualistic thing where they specifically dress like these Iwas to channel them in order to gain strength, power, and fortune. And the famous image is the cane, top hat wearing, skull-faced man with a cigar and some whiskey. Now, they drink the whiskey and smoke the cigar because that's what the demon enjoys having. That's their offering to them. And they do it with the sole intention to be possessed by the spirit of Baron Samedi. And they're open about it. They tell you that's what we're doing this for. But in quite a lot of cultures, they have this other thing. It's called apotropaic. That's the way you describe this practice. And it's the idea that you can dress like the thing to scare it away or to ward bad spirits off. You dress like them to confuse them or something like that. And the video I'm making currently goes into this heavily and shows a lot of these Eastern cultures who believe that they're doing this to scare away the spirits. I contend that's just stupid. That does not make any sense. Dressing like a demon in the physical realm is not going to scare away a demon in the physical realm. Give them some credit. They're not that stupid. Like we said earlier, they are thousands of years old. I do think there's a bit of a long con going on here. I think this is the idea that if we can convince these cultures that they have any form of control over us, then it keeps them thinking they have a level of power, therefore we can stick around, and we'll pretend to be scared away so then they can keep dressing like us and keep those channels open. I think that's really what's going on. And I've had a few messages where people from these cultures are getting offended at me saying these things. And it's not like I'm not trying to cause offense by saying this, but it just seems like obvious from my opinion, from my perspective and my research, because there are plenty of these other cultures who do dress like demons with the sole purpose to be possessed by them. They're not scaring anything away. So why would it suddenly scare them away just in a different culture when they're all representing in their dress the exact same creatures? Because you can see the aesthetical similarities across all of them. So getting back to the modern Western clown, you'll find that this comes out of a long tradition of performing clowns known as the Commedia dell'arte movement that came out of Italy. Now, this performing troupe through the Middle Ages up into the 1600s, when it became popularized again, when theatre was allowed during that Renaissance period and that revival of artistry, you'll find they had these stock characters, and one of them was called Harlequin. Harlequin was picked up through the medieval period and added as a stock character by the 16th century. Because it represented the wild man of Europe. That's where they picked it up, because they were travelling from every country in Europe out of Italy, and they discovered they all have this ancient ancestor worship tradition where they dress up like a huge hairy animal monster thing with sharp teeth and a huge club. That's their version of ancestor spirit worship, of channeling or warding away the demons. That's their version. So they incorporated Harlequin based off the French version of the wild man called Helikins, and they added it into their troupe. And that's where we get Harlequin, the first proto-clownish demonic character. And then that through the 1700s to the 1800s, it progressed into the UK, and it became a part of the theatre of the United Kingdom through pantomime. And then, through the pantomime, you had the British clown, which was very different from the French clown, the Poirot, the basic white-garbed, black pom-poms, very sad figure. It was the British clown was more loutish and loud and like a bit of a drunk, a bit of a fool, a clodhopper, you know, falling over all the time. The comedy came from him being foolish and silly. And by this point, Harlequin wasn't what he used to be. Harlequin used to be that character who was foolish and silly and evil and vicious and tricking people and being mischievous, you know. But by this point, he was kind of a boring character who was just always chasing after this woman called Columbine. So there was a void. The demon character needed to come back, and Clown took that place in the British pantomime. So there was a role switch. So Clown embodies the character of the original Harlequin, who is based off of the wild man tradition of Europe, the ancestor spirit worship tradition, who venerate the Nephilim. So in a historical sense, he is literally a representation of a demon. Like, that just goes without me saying. That's what he embodies in the way he acts, and that's who he's based off of historically throughout Europe. But there was a costume change done in the 1800s by a shady family called the Dibdins. So Charles Dibdin was a renowned member of the Leicestershire Lodge, number 2426 or something like that. He was actually a very famous musician of that time period. He was kind of one of the most famous media moguls of the time. He wrote so many plays and songs which were sung by the British sailors in the military. He kind of was equated with being the most important musician of the time because he kept the morale up for the wartime sailors, and they sang his songs on the boats, and he kind of was equated with being a brilliant man who helped bring our country to victory type of person, you know. But he had a son by the same name called Charles Dibdin Jr., and he headed up the Sadler's Wells Theatre of that time, where the clown and this whole performance was happening. And he kind of hijacked the show. He came in and he said, you know, I'm going to change everything. And this has never been done before, by the way. This is a brand new thing in the 1800s. You know, for hundreds of years, the characters have dressed the same. They've always done the same things. Nothing's changed for centuries. But this son of a Freemason comes along and says, now I'm going to change all the costumes. And he basically changes the way the clown dresses, which used to be a boring, white, plain, nothing servant rag, into this psychedelic, monstrous-looking, fractal, multicolored thing with the crazy wigs. And it was such a bizarre change. There was no reason to do that, necessarily. You know, it's a huge jump from boring, plain servant rags to extremely psychedelic, monstrous-looking clown imagery with polka dots everywhere. It was just, where was this inspiration coming from? And you'll find, you know, he did a lot of traveling around India for a long time in that area, and so did his father, you know, and you know, the Freemasons are traveling men. That's what they do. They travel around and they pick up a thing or two and establish their lodges all over the place. And I think they would have witnessed a lot of this ancestor spirit worship in the Indic regions in Indonesia, let's say. And I think that's where he got the inspiration for his costumes. Because if you look at the demons and the representations all throughout that region, they look identical to the very first clown costumes. They're wearing the same ritualistic garb and the similar face makeup. So it seems like this son of a Freemason inserted into the most popular artistic form of that time, the theatre, a demon on stage to be venerated. And from that day, that image of a clown was picked up by everyone else. It became the standard. And the demon was inserted into the media that day through an idol known as Joseph Grimaldi, who performed the clown brilliantly. People loved his character. They were obsessed with him. He was a rock star of the day, and he was constantly dressed like a demon, and people idolized him. So other clowns who wanted to be clowns, mimicked his dress and the way he looked. He's often equated with being the father of modern clowns, the guy who invented the clown. He wasn't, though. He was just a patsy used to don the costume designed by a son of a Freemason who mimicked it from these ancestor spirit cult worshippers in the East. And he just brought it onto the stage. So it can be traced historically, but it's not talked about. I've kind of uncovered all this, you know, and I'm trying to show historically something dodgy happened at this time period. There was no reason to change the costumes. It was well established for hundreds. People say he was trying to make his mark on the scene to establish himself in the world of theatre as somebody to take seriously or something, but No, it's too obvious, because there's a particular demon in Bali called the Kalasungsang, and this is called that translates to upside down demon, and it's always depicted doing a handstand with its head turned up, looking directly at the person. Basically, like his head is the crotch, basically staring at you with his feet in the air. And you find there a lot of artwork was made of Grimaldi wearing the clown costume, drawings and paintings of him in the exact same position, showing the exact same expression, looking the exact same way. So I think it was a literal takeaway from Bali culture specifically, actually, just south of Indonesia, one of the islands there. And if you look at all the masks in that region of the demon masks, they look just like clowns with white faces, big red lips, but they have fangs sticking out, strange patterns on the face, You can trace it exactly where they came from. And since that day, from then on, circuses became a thing. The clown was adopted into the circus, and you find that all the the original circuses, were created by Freemasons. The Ringling Brothers and the P.T. Barnum and Bailey, they were all Freemasons. All the brothers were Freemasons, and they even combined together to do a show together called The Greatest Show on Earth, And it was called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Now, Freemasons are obsessed with King Solomon. They're obsessed with him. They want to keep building his temple, They want to rebuild Solomon's temple in every way, shape, or form. A lot of the rituals revolve around him. They consider him maybe one of the first master masons, but it also goes all the way back to Nimrod as well. He was considered one of the first original masons, and it's very strange, but the two pillars, Yakin and Boaz, are associated with King Solomon's temple. And Yakin and Boaz, the two pillars, are said to be the pillars that survived after the flood. Gary Wayne talks about this. They were the pillars that had the knowledge which corrupted mankind, inscribed on them in language, in hieroglyphs, created by Enoch, the bad from Cain's lineage. And it's just, that's all secret societies have to link back to this ancient antediluvian serpent worship, veneration of fallen angels and Nephilim gods, And these Freemasons, who have this background and this belief and veneration of demons, created something called a circus. Well, if you look at a circus, it's just an analogy for a Freemason ritual. It's you have the ringmaster with the top hat. Within a lodge, the grand worshipful master of the lodge, the leader of the rituals, is the only one allowed to wear a black top hat, just like the ringleader in a circus. The ringleader orchestrates the clowns. Well, the grand worshipful master in a lodge orchestrates the ritual, which venerates and worships and channels demons. It's the same analogy, but they've just transferred it into a huge grand spectacle and gets the public involved in the ritual. And circuses were a big deal back then. If the circus came to town, you went. What else were you going to do? There was no TV or any of this. You would go, everyone else is going. And the circus itself is kind of like a psychedelic place, full of fractal patterns and designs and spinning light wheels and carousels and all this, and just flashing lights everywhere. I think it is a tongue-in-cheek representation of this DMT realm where the clowns reside, where the jesters reside, where the demons are. They're trying to create physical representations of spiritual concepts, because that opens up channels, it opens up portals, it gives the demons the ability to manifest here physically through the channels that are created who wear the costume, or, in a sense, create an environment, an entire environment like a circus, which would then manifest that spiritual concept into the physical and allow more channels to be open. It seems like that's what was going on. Today,
so much there.
Yeah, today circuses are old news. They're old-fashioned. They don't really happen anymore. We have TV now. The clowns are on television. The clowns are singing to us in the charts, all the famous people dress like clowns, or they at least red the hair up, white the skin up, put bright red lipstick on, or some kind of crazy multicolored clothing on, or something, because they are doing the same thing. They are channeling. They are...
Well, yeah.
Wait, Lady Gaga. That's Lady Gaga.
It's a lot of people.
When I'm thinking of Britney Spears, her song Circus, and I think there's something to, for magic rituals to happen, you have to have an audience. I don't really know about the bylaws of magic, but I think there's something to that. But Paul, I wanted to ask you, because we're talking about the westernized clown, Christopher Nolan's Joker had a huge impact on our culture, and what happened with Heath Ledger and everything. do you think it's possible? I know people talk about like his death was like a direct result of his role as the Joker. Do you think that he possibly was like channeling something by dressing up and acting like the Joker?
I think so. I think the issue is we are quite ignorant in the modern Western world of what it means to dress like something. We don't think there's consequences to doing such things, and it's possible. Heath Ledger didn't know there would be consequences. He probably didn't know anything about this, but he was considered one of the greatest actors of all time after his death due to playing this role. I think the veneration of the clown has always been there in the media. And if you dress like a clown, you will end up channeling or being an open vessel for demons and will be a heavily demonized individual. And he discussed having issues like that during the process before, obviously, dying. I think it's common. Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, he like had to take like a bunch of sleeping pills because like he couldn't sleep because he was so disturbed by the role. So to me that that sounds like the role, but I don't know, like what else was disturbing him, like. Yeah,
well, I said there are detrimental consequences to how you choose to dress. Okay, you have to be careful about it. Being ignorant of the rule of spiritualism doesn't make you immune to it somehow, And like I said, I think he was a victim. Some people play into it and want to channel them and purposefully dress like them to gain power and strength and, and be a part of that. I think there's a lot of talentless people who do it, who end up becoming talented because they're channeling demons, and you'll find they often have this channel and they dress in this insane way, a psychedelic fractaled monster demon looking thing. And I think if that's not happening, simply dress that way and be an up and coming musician and you will get picked up and put in the spotlight because you have the right aesthetic. The idea is to get other people to idolize this image, to copy it. The more people they can get dressing in this way, just like their idols do, or just like those people who think, well, if I want to be famous, I need to dress like these famous people, so I will mimic them and add more to the people dressing like clowns aesthetic in culture, then that's more channels for the demons to open. So it is a hand-in-hand agenda, in a sense, and who runs the music industry but the Illuminati, as they say, these people who are a part of these ancient Nephilim worshipping serpent cults, from the antediluvian age up until now. It's no joke to dress like a clown, and like I said, Heath Ledger's just a cautionary tale, really. I mean, people say it's method acting, they're embodying the role holistically outside of acting on the screen, and that sounds to me like demonic possession, just a fancy way of describing it,
channeling somebody.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, if you just look at the specific role of the Joker, right? So Jared Leto took up the Joker after 10 years after Heath Ledger did, but he was doing some demonic stuff to his cast members during the filming of the Suicide Squad, where he would literally like leave a jar of pee in front of the actor's trailer and do all these kind of crazy pranks, saying that he was trying to get into the character. And then you look at Joaquin Phoenix, who picked up the role of the Joker and completely just nails it, and kind of nails the anxiety-ridden part of our culture and that part within us. There's definitely, now that you're pointing this out to us, Paul, it's definitely a very, very clear connection. And I just want to add, before I let you go again, we had, I was going to a church a couple years ago, and there was a guy that was insistent to the pastor that he wanted to dress up like a pantomime and do his pantomime stuff in the corner while the worship team was going. Pastor said, okay, fine, go ahead and do it. This is after like a month of the guy just insisting, it's my form of worship. I want to be able to worship. But there was a couple that went to our church that was from Africa. They walked in, saw him doing that, and they said, no, he's worshiping demons. That's what they did in our country, to worship demons and to bring them in. You've got to have them stop. And so eventually the pastor did tell him just to stop for the sake of this couple, because they couldn't get past it, because it was a part of their culture. Very, very interesting connections, Paul.
No, absolutely. In Africa, ancestor spirit worship is the norm. It's the norm that it's all across the continent, and Africa's huge. You know, it has a lot of people, but they all have the exact same practice. They're dressed like these incredibly psychedelic looking monsters in order to channel them and to be possessed by them, to gain strength from them. You have to understand, in these cultures, in these practices where Christianity isn't the dominant norm or thought process, the demons kind of have free reign. They have the ability to openly be out and worshipped and venerated, and to possess people openly and let other people of the tribe witness the possessed person be cut and healed instantly, or to go through extreme pain or be stabbed and survive, and all these powers that the demon would give and the people are all around. They're doing tribalistic drumming and music and whistling and howling to the whole energy of the situation, loving it, and the demon loves it too. And they don't have to hide in these cultures. In the West, they have to remain hidden and occulted because we are kind of a bit more Christianized and more clued in to Jesus and his ability to cast demons out, so they have to kind of use the symbol of a clown to remain hidden. Because what is a clown to us but just something harmless for the kids, I'm sure that pastor probably thought, it's just a clown, it's just silly, whatever, let him do what he wants to do, it's not a big deal. But then somebody from these ancestor spirit cultures, who like I said, they dress in a way very similar to how a Western clown looks, and all cultures do because they all venerate the same creatures, the Nephilim. That's the only thing on the other side. They all look the same, and they come into this and witness that. Of course, they're going to say, I left my country to get away from this. That's the point,
The more I'm thinking about it, though, is this dude... He wanted to be in front of people dancing in his pantomime, his mime makeup, while the worship team is worshiping. And it just makes me think like it was like, I mean, the dude, I'm telling you, like I knew him, he was not right in the head. And it's just, you're making these connections for me that he was like wanting to almost take on this worship. I mean, I've played in a worship band, many, many years, and there's no way we're going to let anybody just dance and do their thing. You know what I'm saying? Arbitrarily. Now, if you're a part of the audience, but you're not coming on and being a part of the band to dress up like a clown and dance unless we feel that it's Holy Spirit led. So just very, very interesting connections. So Paul, we've only got about 10 more minutes here with you.
Okay.
So give us, I know you've made so many brilliant connections to the clown appearance and how that's all connected. Give us a little bit more. Give us the new stuff that you've got going on that you're going to be dropping soon and blow our mind again, because you've really blown my mind. And that happens, just to be honest. I mean, I am being arrogant here, but my mind's not blown very much. But you've blown my mind here.
Mine too.
Okay, well, I discussed the new stuff that's coming out soon at the start. It's about the exploration again of the eastern Indic regions, the oceanic regions. I've already talked about Papua New Guinea and their particular cannibalistic tribes who still practice cannibalism, and they venerate this ancestor spirit where they white their skin up, put on a big red headdress full of reeds, and but just east of them are all these other archipelagos that kind of have more Indian Hindu inspired visage of demons, and it's kind of the same theme throughout the whole thing. But like I said, the latest discovery is that Joseph Grimaldi's outfit seems to be a direct copy of one specific demon called the Upside Down Demon from Bali. Now, you think about the concept of that anyway. What is a clown but a somebody who does things counter to the cultural norm, the opposite of everything? Being the upside down creature is kind of what the clown embodies. If you go to the Americas, they have the Heyoka tribe, for example. And the Pueblo tribe have their own version of this, which looks identical, which is a black and white fractaled thing with weird antennas, big red lips, And the clown is supposed to be a cultural contrarian. It's a holy symbol in their culture. And it represents, funnily enough, a direct copy of a thunder god. That's supposed to be what it's meant to be.
Huh.
And on the earth, they wear big, silly, big, long red shoes like a clown. And they do silly things in the tribe. They walk backwards, for example. You know what I mean? They just do anything they can to prod at the cultural norms of their tribe to remind them to not take life too seriously, in a sense, which is kind of what the jesters always say to Joe Rogan whenever he does his trips. It's always the
why
same.
so serious?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But in terms of like that's the newest revelation that I think I've pinpointed exactly where that costume has come from. It's come straight from Bali, specifically the upside down demon. I would say that.
No, let me ask you like an applicable question here. So here we are in America, the Western world, where we're super sophisticated and we know all the knowledge per se, right? But yet we're letting a lot of this stuff, be hidden in plain sight. And I know you kind of hit on it a little bit more, but what can the possible consequence be if you are celebrating stuff like this, even if you are a Christian and you're going to a mega church and they have some sort of festival with clowns and whatever, Halloween? Is there, in your opinion and in your research that you found, is there a consequence, and what is that consequence? And can we, I guess, usurp that consequence if we gain the knowledge that we're doing something that's offending God?
Well, I think obviously we have grace through faith, and there is forgiveness. So it's not, if you're doing it ignorantly, then of course you're not going to probably get punished drastically, but there are consequences for doing it. Again, being ignorant of the spiritual law doesn't make you immune to it. You're probably going to, I wouldn't say Christians can be possessed because we're filled with the Holy Spirit, but you can certainly be oppressed and tempted and manipulated, and things can happen around you, if you keep those channels open. So we're always, once you know about it, I would say maybe if you dress like a clown regularly and you're a Christian, maybe try and stop doing that. That's all I could probably say. But for example, it can lead to death and insanity if you constantly channel a Nephilim from the other side in the visage of a clown. Heath Ledger is a good example, But there are consequences for this. There are serious spiritual consequences, and death is the end result if you take it too far. I mean, I'm worried because just this year in 2023, clown fashion is actually being pushed on us through the mainstream media now on the runways. You can type it in Clowncore 2023 and you'll find an Elle article showing runway models at the highest end fashion shows in Europe walking down the catwalk wearing Harlequin outfits and clown aesthetics. Now, what comes downwind of these insane costumes on the catwalk is a watered down version into the outlets where we buy our clothes from, but they are pushing clown fashion as the hot new trend of 2023 onto the general population. So there are consequences for dressing like a clown, like I said, and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
What I would
Can I say something?
Go ahead, yeah.
Really not politically correct?
Sure.
I mean, we aren't on our show. I don't know what your audience is like. So, man, just like the cultural, like upside down thing. Like, what about in 2023, the proliferation in the media of like drag queens?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I call them the multicolored collective to get rid of the algorithm. To try and get past the algorithm, because this is the thing with the multicolored collective. They're a vast community of different competing factions who often eat each other alive over the oppression Olympics situation, but they all, have you noticed that they seem to have a similar aesthetic, extremely colourful, dehumanizing clothing and ideologies about mutilating one's body with piercings and bright tattoos, shaving their hair, bright multicolored hair, a lot like a clown, colourful makeup, extreme over-the-top exaggerated makeup. I mean, if you what is a drag queen but a clown when you actually look at it, you know what I mean? And don't forget, these things were venerated as gods among men originally, these hermaphroditic, strange-looking, clownish monster creatures, that are half divine, half human. Well, I think if you have someone like a drag queen who's an untouchable in our society today, venerated and glorified on the stage as the pinnacle of beauty and amazement, even though that's absolute nonsense, and the demon within them is being channeled, and the demon's going to love that veneration once more, and there's definitely a connection.
Totally. Yeah. Untouchable, right? Not in the biblical sense of like untouchable, you're outside, but untouchable, like no one can say anything about you. You're,
absolutely.
Right, and it's happening in like high schools all over, and like I live in the Midwest, and well, in the United States, the Midwest is very like homegrown, whatever, but like there's even now like trans, like homecoming queens and stuff is becoming like a very normal thing, because like who could not vote for, yeah, and I just wonder, like, what are these people channeling, and like whether or not they mean to, whether or not they just think it's like a fun expression or whatever. It's like you just do see like certain crimes and stuff following like that group of people, right? Like crimes against children and stuff, and it's just like, what are we doing?
It's always the children. I mean, first of all, the Shriners, for example, who are a level above Freemasonry, all have a clown sect, and they claim they're doing it to help the sick, dying children in their Shriner-run hospitals, where they dress like clowns to go and entertain the sick, dying children. But think about that,
Right.
you know, dying children in their last moments of life see a clown. Kids do not like clowns. I'm sorry, the studies have been done.
No.
They're actually terrified of them. It's maybe like 1 in 100 who likes clowns. They're an outlier,
Yeah.
not the norm. And why the hell we associate clowns with children is beyond me.
And birthdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and what about, and again, like I don't remember what you called them, but the alphabet community, you know, or like drag queens going and reading to children and like protesting about how this is like a right. It's like, why don't you go read to like the elderly, or like,
Well,
you know, like I feel like you don't see that happening.
no, they're trying to influence the mind of the young, absolutely. I mean, what reaction do you get from a clown, if not extreme fear or extreme laughter? I do think that the energy produced by those things is a kind of food to these demons. I don't want to get too new agey about that, and, you know, loosh is a thing people talk about where demonic feed off the negative energy of people or something. I mean, Monsters Inc. is literally about that. Interdimensional monsters feeding off the screams of children, and then at the end...
Yeah.
They use laughter.
laughter.
They use laughter energy instead, you know, and I think that's a tongue-in-cheek reference to the way these things work and why they use children, because children will give you the extremes, the extreme reactions. You know, it's either intense fear or extreme laughter. It's one or the two.
Wow.
And if you are embodying a demon by dressing like one, like the Shriners do, and you go to a child and elicit such a reaction, then if you are channeling a demon, that demon within you will feed off the energy of that child right in front of you, you know, because you're making that reaction happen. So I think these hospitals are kind of like loosh farms for for demons to channel through the vessels wearing the costume, which are the Shriners, who are an offshoot of Freemasonry, who worship the demons. So they're working hand in hand, and they do it publicly. They can do it publicly, dressed like a clown, and people think it's harmless and innocent. It's not. It's a tool. It's an occult tool.
Yeah.
You know?
So crazy. I feel like I just need to start wearing a potato sack. Like, like there's nothing going on here. No one's, yeah.
Well, you know, it's so interesting, because it is our entire global culture is embedded with occult stuff. I mean, that's where our culture comes from, the occult. It just does. And once you do, you get the scales falling off your eyes and you start seeing that, you know, I believe as a Christian, you are able to walk in more love and in more power, not because you have information that other people don't have, but you're seeing the line being blurred, and you can understand what the demonic realm wants. And what they want, you know, as Paul says, is they want to inhabit you, and then they want to kill you, and they want to go on to another person. That's the whole end game of them. And at the core of all of this is what I'm hearing is look at me, worship what's in me. I'm going to, you know, call people to myself, whether you're LGBTQ plus, you're doing it as a clown, you're wanting the attention on you. And like you said at the end there, to feed off of that. And that's not what Christ tells us to do. He says to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. Mm-hmm. It's not about us. It's about him. And these demons, they want that admiration coming from us. I think they miss it. You know, they miss it from, you know, the old days. But Paul, we're running out of time here. We absolutely are going to have you back on. And we're going to have Chris, our other co-host, on, and we're going to pick your brain a lot more. We'll go into more detail. But dude, you blew my mind. I just really thank you for the work that you've done. You've outlined it here brilliantly. I see the connections super clear. Tori?
Yeah, same. Mine is completely blown. Thank you so much. And guys, if you're listening, please go check out his YouTube channel. Again, listen to his episode on Tinfoil Hat Pod.
We'll link all that up. But yeah, Paul represents the fringe Christian on that secular show very, very well. He blows their mind and they have these revelations where they're like, whoa! And when you hear someone who doesn't have Christ being preached the gospel, not from Calvary Chapel type of point of view, but from the Gary Wayne fringe Christian point of view, these are revelations happening. Something is happening with Christianity, with understanding these origins, and I love it. I'm obsessed with it. We're not stopping here. We got to keep pulling on this thread, Tori.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Man, thank you so much.
No,
yeah, thanks,
fine.
Paul.
It's fine. I'm happy to pull on as many threads as you want. I'll gladly come back. That's fine.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we'll edit this down. We'll have it out probably next week. But we'll contact you and we'll get you back on the books and we'll go down some other rabbit trails, man. You got a lot of good stuff, man. And
thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to run. I'm actually at work right now.